Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're checking in on my VermiBag Mini on day 589. Only 111 days until we reach the 700 days in service that the VermiBag did last time it was in service. And at the end of that go around, we decided to harvest the material in the system by simply hauling it back out the way it came versus the intended way, which is to open up the hatch down at the bottom where there's a zipper and the harvest panel opens up, and then out can be dropped a certain portion of the material that's down at the bottom lying in wait. And someday I think we are going to probably harvest material out of this system in the conventional fashion versus just removing it the way I did last time. But that has yet to happen. I've not yet ever harvested the VermiBag Mini using the harvest panel. I don't even think I've ever even opened up the zipper down there, but someday I promise I will, but not today. Today we're just feeding. The system's so far received 47 feedings, and the last one was 10 days ago. You can see some signs of that last feeding over here in the little divot that's developing. We laid down some of my prepared bedding underneath the feeding, and then after the feeding was complete, in came this nice top dressing of leaves. And I've equipped myself similarly with my prepared bedding and my leaf supply on the ready, which is sort of the routine down here for the most part. Another thing that was for the longest time a routine in this system was for me to grab my spray bottle and to always try to compensate for drying that was happening in this system. My first place to check for how dry things were would typically just right here in between the bag surface itself and the material in the bag. And I believe that right here we can see the one thing that I was always hoping for but never did see during the longest time, which is worms hanging out in the stuff. Usually we would pull this stuff up and it would be super dry from having been exposed to the bag surface, which, you know, has the feature of being very breathable, and that makes for a very nice healthy environment for the worms, but that also results in some moisture loss in the system as a result of the air coming and going through the bag wall. But ever since I wrapped the system in some extra bubble wrap, there was already wrapping around the system, a bubble wrap wrapping around the system, but not all the way around. And it still isn't all the way around, but it's much closer to being full coverage all the way around than it was. And it's doing a heck of a job keeping the moisture in. I could see the bag not requiring that in the summertime when it's humid. There's a lot of moisture in the air, but right now in the wintertime with the furnace running constantly, my furnace dries the air out in the house considerably. So things that could normally just sit out in the open, perhaps a piece of bread or something, without drying out too quickly, just dry out instantly. You know, the dryness in the air just has this tendency to pull moisture out of things. But I think spring is in the air. I think things are warming up. You know, I went back to the video. I was curious earlier in terms of how we're doing on the level in here. So let me just sort of level things off again so we can see how the level is relative to the top of this window over here. This little view panel allows you to open the hatch up and then look through this clear plastic to see what's going on here. When I first launched this system, the first video I did was first video I checked out earlier this morning was the launch of this system. At which time we emptied, I think, 3 or 4 buckets worth of, not full, but 3 systems in which I was running worms in yellow buckets were emptied into here after they hit their 6 months in service, along with some pumpkin stems that they were in the process of working on. One of those pumpkin stems still remains in here. And there was even reference to it on my green information board. But at that time, we started the system, and the level was right there at the bottom of the window. And up until even the day 500, I went to a video where we checked in on this system on day 500, which was like almost 3 months ago at this point. And even then, after 500 days in service, the level in this system never seemed to rise above that lower pane of the view window. But something we've been doing over the past 3 or so months has really helped. And, you know, we've been super generous with bedding and the moisture too. We've been pretty generous with the moisture. And now that the system's got its ability to hang on to its moisture without being supplemented, I think that's even better. So it is kind of refreshing to finally see the level of the system beginning to rise versus just remaining exactly at the same exact level for months and months and months and months and months. So I guess we did sort of challenge ourselves, and we kept looking at that level, and we, you know, repeatedly mentioned over and over how it would be really cool to finally see the level in this thing start to rise. So I believe that that's really going to be my trigger for finally doing a harvest, is that I feel like I've got enough material up on top so that it's kind of wedged into the container and can hold itself as the material on the bottom is released and left to drop out. That's the thing that kind of panics me. The thought of opening the bottom hatch to harvest a little bit of material out of there and then finally ending up with a whole bunch of stuff that just flows out, the entire container flowing out and emptying, when all you're really hoping to do is pull out a little bit of this stuff and harvest it. But I think that's the main reason I'm holding off until I really get a good sense of confidence about the fact that this material is not going to eject itself out the bottom. So now we've definitely dug deep. Oh, I think we fed this onion last week. Seems like there were virtually no leftovers, but this thing looks like it's almost intact. There's even a worm hiding inside. Yeah, I collected all these leftovers, banana peels and whatnot, and then out comes this onion that looks like it's hardly broken down at all. Oops, whatever that was. All right, let's proceed. We did have a feeding zone indicator. I usually use these coffee filters just to drop it right on top of the feeding zone to show ourselves where we last fed. So I think we'll just hang on to that and use it in the same capacity when we're done covering up the feeding zone and leveling things off. But I think we're going to follow suit with what we did last time, which was to grab my prepared bedding, grab a nice generous handful of it, place it down here in the feeding zone. And even though the system feels comfortable now, I am cautious about, you know, not letting the system suddenly drop to a moisture level that would result in an uncomfortable environment for the worms. I really like the way the worms look in a system like this, where the moisture's left to be a little bit higher than it normally is in my systems, because the worms just seem really chubby and comfortable and healthy, lively. So it kind of makes me wonder how come I'm not running more of my systems in a more damp configuration. I think, you know, I've gone through bouts of dealing with systems where things had gotten muddy and things become unwieldy. But I think the remedy for that is, you know, you can still continue to create a nice damp environment for your worms, but as long as, you know, as long as you're adding a good amount of bedding all the time, then you don't have to worry about things getting too muddy. I mean, that's not a guarantee, but that's just my observation, is that I don't feel like I've been getting those really muddy situations in recent times, since I kind of forced myself to become a lot more generous with bedding in my worm bins. All right, so in went the bedding and the new food. We even dropped in a lot of the leftovers, the old food from previous check-ins. We'll give them some grit, and we can even top off with a little bit of coffee. And it certainly doesn't seem like it would do any harm to even add a little bit more bedding, right? So why don't we? I'm really getting a thrill out of seeing the system's level finally rising. So I don't want to back off. I want to just keep my foot on the accelerator and keep giving these little guys what I think they really want, which is just more bedding. More bedding, more space for them to expand their numbers into, and eventually it'll get us to some point where we can Harvest. What the heck is this? Got like almost an entire banana here. Uneaten, guys. What's going on? I don't even know if that was part of the last feeding. I definitely remember a banana peel, but I don't remember an entire banana. Perhaps this thing was actually holding together and just finally got breached recently, and that's the reason it's not yet been devoured. So why don't we just position that right there with all the rest of the yummy foods in the middle, and I believe that that will get us to the point where we can do the final step, which is to drop in some of this lovely leafy matter on top. You saw how nice and damp and glistening this stuff was when we came in here originally, when we opened up the system and removed the plastic covers. All the moisture in the system that would normally just evaporate and be lost to the air recirculates beneath that plastic cover and results in a really nice cozy spot. All that moisture recirculating. I think the worms really like it. So that's it for our check-in, everyone. With the VermiBag Mini, look at that level. It's going to be pretty cool when we can no longer see the top of that little view panel. Or at least I think so. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.